So when I work at the crime lab, a very common question that's asked is there a struggle, right? What I mean is there a struggle? Well, generally when two people get into a fight and one of them has a gun and they're struggling, the gun can go off like accidentally. Well, the person who shot the other person can use that as an excuse that, oh, it's an accidental discharge. I didn't mean to shoot him, right? Well, that's why it's a question that needs to be asked forensically, right? They can't use that as an excuse anymore if they were actually far away when the gun went off and the guy got shot. So, as a forensic scientist, what do I do to figure out whether or not a person was in a struggle when they were shot? Taking a look at, when you fire a gun, though, you see that a plume of smoke comes out with the bullet. This plume of smoke is actually filled with things called GSR, or gunshot residue. We'll talk about more specifically what that is in a second. But then also, once a target is hit, and this is actually a black T-shirt that was shot. No one ever gets shot with a white T-shirt on. It would make things a lot easier. But if you look really closely, you'll see these little speckles of black right here, shiny black. That's gunpowder. That also came out when the gun was shot, right? So you'll get this mixture of like burned gunpowder that caused the explosion that made the bullet fly out the barrel of the gun. But then you also get some unburned gunpowder too that will fly out of the barrel with the bullet and hit the target, right? And that actually sticks to the target, and that helps us with our forensic analysis, right? Why does it help us with our forensics analysis? Well, it's because if there was a struggle during the discharge of the firearm, then all this GSR or gunshot residue should be all over the person that was shot, right? But if the guy was far away when he shot the person that he was fighting with, right, there wouldn't be any of these things present, right? So how do we tell? Guess what? We use chemistry. I have a hypothesis. This is my problem right here, right? This is my problem. Was it a struggle or not? Well, my hypothesis is that, there's a stuff present. Maybe he was close. Maybe there was a struggle, right? So what is the experiment going to be? Well, turns out there are several different chemicals that you can use to detect gunshot residue. One of them is actually called sodium rhodesonate. And what it does is that when it binds to lead, and lead is a part of gunshot residue, you don't really need to know the actual reactions that are occurring here. You just need to know that rhodesonate turns purple in the contact when it comes in contact with lead. It's detecting lead, which is also known as PB, lead. It turns purple, right? So what part of gunshot residue is actually lead? Well, the primer mixture has lead in it, right? In a actual cartridge, where the bullet actually originated from, there's gunpowder inside the cartridge case, and then outside the cartridge case, there's a little primer that when you hit it makes a little tiny explosion. When you hit it, that's from the firing pin hits it, and there's this little tiny explosion, and that little tiny explosion is what ignites the actual gunpowder, and that gunpowder is what then expels the bullet from the barrel. So that little primer right there with a small explosion actually has a compound in it called lead stephanate, and lead stephanate is present in mass quantities in gunshot residue, and that's actually what you're detecting with sodium rhodesonate, lead stephanate. Bullets are also made of lead too, but really we're looking for the lead stephanate from the primer mixtures. There's another test that you can do too, right here, called the modified Grice test, and it's got multiple different chemicals in it that will react and give you an orange color in the presence of NO2 minus. So NO2 minus is actually nitrite, right? And nitrite is the component that is left over after gunpowder has burned, right? Gunpowder is burned, and then now you have the nitrite ion, right? And in this case, during the modified Grice, you're detecting nitrate, and if you have a lot of nitrite around, that's also indicative of someone being very close to the person when the gun discharged. Last but not least, in the gunshot residue detection, right, is we have a molecule called diphenylamine. And diphenylamine, when it actually comes in contact with gunpowder itself that hasn't been burned yet or exploded yet, it's actually NO3 plus, or sorry, NO3 minus. This is the nitrite ion, right? Just to be clear, NO2 is nitrite, NO3 minus is nitrate. That's unburned gunpowder. So diphenylmine, when it comes in contact with nitrate ions from unburned gunpowder, it actually turns blue. So there's another way to detect whether or not there was gunshot residue that's present on the victim when they were shot. And then over here we actually have another molecule called dithioxamide, right? What it does is that it will combine with copper and turn green. Why do we need to detect copper? It turns out that a lot of the bullets that we find in casework, they are bullets. Most commonly they're bullets that are copper jacketed, right? The bullet itself is lead inside, and then it's jacketed with copper on the outside, right? And so when you're looking at like a bullet hole in a shirt, you need to make sure it actually is a bullet hole and not from like, somebody just, tearing it with a knife or something like that, or just tearing a hole in it, right? Well, how do you do that? Well, the copper, as it passes through the shirt, will leave behind the copper from the bullet jacket will leave behind some copper in the bullet hole when it passes through the shirt. And then we can use this molecule right here, the dithioxamide, to confirm that that bullet hole was actually a bullet hole and not something else, not caused by something else. So all these things together, if you see, are present on a person when they're shot, generally means that the gun was close to them when they were shot. So we can use that as a tool, along with many other things, other evidence, as a tool to ask and answer the question, was it a struggle? Interesting stuff.